Morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Oh, man, I thought Elaine would have pumped you guys up already. How's everyone doing this morning? So it's going to be a big challenge for me psychologically, after Zafrul talking this morning, and then Patrick had a PM with the fireside chat and everything. So I will try and do some justice to you guys and be as upbeat as I can and share as much as I can to just make sure that we don't go off tangent or anything. So, over the last 2 days, or yesterday and some conversations this morning, some of you guys are familiar with MaGIC, but some of you guys were not familiar with MaGIC. So I thought, let me just do a little bit of a brief so that we can set the context of the conversation that we have today. So, just to share a little bit, our goal essentially is to build a global creativity and innovation hub where we want to build great entrepreneurs, using that as a means to build great entrepreneurs essentially. And we've got two key things that we focus in areas that we do. One is to build a sustainable entrepreneurship ecosystem, and the other one is to catalyze creativity and innovation for long-term nation impact. And we're using basically entrepreneurship as a means for this. And we design all our programs and initiatives that culminates within the context of creativity and innovation. And that comes from basically helping people churn up new ideas and helping them commercialize them via startups, or even looking at existing organizations, leveraging on startups to bring new innovation into their organization, essentially. So those are the kind of frames and our mental mode that we do at MaGIC. And by doing all these things, then we've got a few other things where we look at investors for investments and making sure things happen well enough. We look at building ecosystems around it to make sure that things get connected. And this is just a quick preview, essentially. I'm not going to go one by one, but we've got two areas that we look at within MaGIC. One is on commercial entrepreneurship development. The other one is actually on social enterprise. These are two core areas that we look at. Fundamentally, it's entrepreneurship, but each social entrepreneurship has a slightly different slant where you focus more on social impact by still ensuring sustainability in what they are doing for it. So we've got an academy running. We've got some partnerships with Stanford to make sure that there's exposure to our startups in Malaysia and to bring back and adopt and adapt things that can work for them back home or regionally. We've got an accelerator program running for both tracks, the ASEAN track and also the social enterprise track. So as much as it's run within Malaysia, we have an ASEAN view, essentially. So when we say an ASEAN view is that even at our accelerator programs, we make sure that the composition of participants are of diversity. So we've got about 60% who are Malaysians, 40% come from all over the world that has an ASEAN-centric focus. And what we want to happen there, essentially, is for all these organizations or these startups and individuals to kind of cross-share from a cultural perspective, from a thought perspective, so that we can actually have everyone thinking from an ASEAN mental mode, essentially. So it works for both the ASEAN startup track and also for social enterprises. We've got MaGIC Central that basically looks at pulling together the various resources that's available within the country and channeling entrepreneurs to the right resources. And we've also got an ASEAN Center of Entrepreneurship that kind of connects various partners around the region so that we can help startups both ways, from Malaysia going out and also from startups from other partner countries around the region to hop from one place to another and also to come into Malaysia, essentially. And we've got a new initiative that we're looking at where we call it a Startup Exchange Program, where we kind of cross-leverage each other's strength to be able to tee up startups in terms of going to their various markets. So that's just to give a brief perspective in terms of what MaGIC does, what we do, what our goals are, essentially. But moving to the theme of the day, and why I wanted to highlight this. Now, this is like technically my 1 month on the job as CEO for MaGIC, essentially. And one of the things that people keep on asking me coming on board is that everyone is asking me whether, so is MaGIC focusing on tech? Is MaGIC focusing on non-tech? What is the balance? Are you going to shift? Are you not going to shift? And so forth for it. So the answer to this question is like, it's really not about tech or non-tech. It's really all about innovation at the end of the day. And when we talk about innovation, in this day and age, right, you can't run away from tech. So what I want to communicate to you guys over here, friends over here essentially, is that let's shift our focus towards innovation. Let's shift, what Patrick said yesterday morning. Look at the problem. What problems are we trying to solve? And if they require tech, then let's use tech. And like I said, in this day and age, you can't run away from not using tech in terms of ensuring service delivery. And when we talk to entrepreneurs nowadays also, it's what we're trying to do in MaGIC also from a mental mode perspective is that we're trying to prep entrepreneurs today for the future business landscape. So we don't want people to come and say, hey, you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur and I think I want to do this particular business. And we start back, as like I said, Patrick said yesterday, that's the core at our end. When an entrepreneur comes, we say, what problems do you want to solve? And once they identify that problem, and when we tell them we talk about innovation, it can come from multiple forms. It could be literally just using tech. It could be a change in business model. It could be a change in business processes at the end of the day, or even the service delivery approach. But if you start at that, and then once you work backwards and say, you know what, in order for me to achieve that goal, I need to use an app. I need to use some form of technology, then it makes better sense. We've seen too many of a time that entrepreneurs or startups that comes and, straight, I want to build this app because I think I can solve this. But it's not deep diving enough in terms of what is the problem that they're trying to solve, the audience that they're trying to address, and the value proposition that they're trying to give. So where we're coming from, it's not really about whether are you a tech company or are you a non-tech company, but it's really about what innovation or what problems that you're trying to solve within the market space through. And as we're constantly designing programs or improving the programs that we do at MaGIC, the thing that comes to mind every day within the MaGIC family and MaGIC team is that, how do we be more efficient and scalable in helping entrepreneurs succeed? That's the thing that keeps me awake at night, essentially. That's the thing that I'm hoping that my team members, stay awake at night trying to think also. We've got programs running, but how do we make sure that we can impact more people? How can we make sure that the things that we do is scalable enough so that it's not just within the Malaysian context, that it goes beyond the borders of Malaysia. It goes within the regional context. It goes within the global context. But in order to do that, we've got to constantly think in terms of how can we be more efficient? How can we scale the things that we do? So being new on the job also, and when we were invited to actually come to Wild Digital, I thought, great, I've now got, validation market here that I can actually leverage on to kind of see whether things can work or things cannot work, essentially, right? So our hypothesis is actually, in order to scale, in order to make sure that we move more efficiently, the hypothesis is to develop micro-ecosystems. Now, what do I mean by micro-ecosystems, essentially? So expanding from there is actually to look at the possibilities of creating vertical creativity and innovation labs, regardless whether it's physical or virtual. Now, why is there a need for a vertical creativity? The idea stemmed from basically looking at how the regional space is now mushrooming with accelerators. Now, accelerators are awesome at bringing companies from one point to the next one in a very short period. However, as you see within the market space also, the differentiation factor between one accelerator to another accelerator is starting to get diluted because everyone's going horizontal. So from a content level perspective, right, it's pretty much the same. You've got your business model that you're going to look at, draw up your canvas, do your validation, and then go out to market and so forth for it. But the real value that we can do to actually impact entrepreneurs is actually trying to build that vertical networks that startups require to make them succeed. That startups require to form partnerships easily enough fast enough in order for them to test things, bounce things off with the right people so they can get the right solution that impacts the community that they're trying to serve. So we're thinking of pretty much, building up vertical creativity and innovation labs. And what we aspire this to be for entrepreneurs is that it becomes a playground for them to test out new ideas, and at the same time, having the right networks and support system. Now, so while I say accelerator programs are awesome, but they can only deal with small number of people. So you would need a whole load of accelerators out there if you're trying to impact a larger population. So how do we get, the whole mindset and psyche of creativity and innovation to a larger population? So that's our hypothesis. So if we were to look at micro ecosystems, channel that into a CNI type lab where people can just test out new ideas, regardless of what sectors that you're in, whatever verticals that you're in, essentially. So that's where we're thinking of from a concept perspective. And the idea, I guess, is that, if you've got this lab component with all those elements of the right networks, the right tool sets over there, and then we couple that with some skill sets on value innovation tools, making sure that as they're designing their product or their service, that they are actually designing it from something that they can value innovate. So it's not just a me too. So it may look like a me too, but there's got a strategic game plan to make sure that they can sustain in the long term. We tell entrepreneurs that, let's not just build businesses that can last a year or 2 years. Let's build a business that can last a lifetime. While it's great when we talk about exits and so forth, but let's not think from designing a business from an exit perspective. If it happens, that's awesome. But design a business that can sustain forever, literally, essentially. So then, if you combine this two, then we hope to be able to help entrepreneurs build low-cost, high-impact, sustainable solutions of businesses, essentially. So this is one snapshot of possibilities of clustering that we're talking about. Building vertical creativity and innovation labs. And this is just sampling. It's not limited to this. And when we look at any particular cluster, what we want to happen is whether a startup or an entrepreneur says that, I think I've got a way to solve this particular problem. You want them to be able to go to a place, talk to the right industry players, get them validated, or even get them to buy into your ideas through. Couple that with a very relatable coaching and mentoring support system, then I think we've got something going on here in a more scalable manner. It doesn't have to just be in Malaysia. It could be a lab that actually harnesses a global network, not just within the Malaysian structure or systems per se. So that's how we're thinking of at the moment in terms of catalyzing creativity and innovation with regards to the various landscape that we're dealing with around. And like I said, it's still a hypothesis. I'm constantly discussing with our internal team. And as bouncing off and then looking at things that's happening at Wild Digital, I thought, hey, you know what? It's a great audience. We've got entrepreneurs here, we've got investors here, we've got corporate sectors over here. I love to experiment things. And as even Patrick said yesterday, as much as MaGIC is not technically, it is a government agency. But we like to believe that we behave like a startup. So when we talk about behaving like a startup, it means that we've got to test out new things. We've got to experiment new things. I'm not saying that creating a creativity and innovation lab would solve all problems. I'm not saying that the creativity and innovation lab idea would essentially allow us to scale, but I think it can. I may be wrong. But what I'm calling out to everyone over here also is that if you guys share the passion in any particular vertical, if you guys share the passion in trying to make sure that entrepreneurs can actually get to market from their idea really fast, if you're an investor who wants to see things materialize really fast to get your yield and your ROI, if you're a corporate sector that's involved in any of those verticals right now, come and have a chat with us. Because come and have a chat with us, come and experiment with us. Come and see whether we can make the whole idea of changing the landscape of each vertical market transformative. But we can only do that if the dynamics of all these various facets of the vertical comes together, shares the same vision, and more importantly, willing to experiment on new things and take that slight gamble, just so that we want to see things change for the better of our future, essentially. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope to hear from you guys, and let's see what we can do.